Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya Vande Sri Ramanarshi Acharyasya Padabjam Yo me darshayadhisham Bhantam Dhwantamatityaha Akhanda Satchidanande Parabrahmanya Laukike Vilasantam Gurum Nomim Sarvata Hridyaham Bhaje. Day by Day with Bhagavan, Episode 3. 31-10-45 Morning. Chella Bhattar, Daivasikamani Bhattar, temple priest of Tiruchuri, has come. Bhagavan pointed him out to me and said, "Whenever I see him, I am reminded of the cut I received on my left finger and the scar it has left. I was about 8 years old and he about 3. His house was third from ours. Before his birth and when I was a child, I used to be frequently taken to their house and petted as almost their child. It was Pongal time, and this child came to our house with one hand holding a new Arivan Manai blade fastened to a piece of wood for slicing vegetables, and the other hand dragging a long, stout sugar cane. I hastened to cut the sugar cane for the child and accidentally got a cut between my thumb and left forefinger. I quietly asked the child to go back to his house and ran to the hospital and got my wound treated. It is this gentleman's son that was here some time back, called Karpura Sundaram, who is now doing puja in Sundara Mandiram at Tiruchuri. Afternoon. Ganapati Shastri brought a letter received by him from Grant Duff, who was here some years ago and is a great devotee of Bhagavan. In that letter, Grant Duff says he is in California with the permission of the USA government, that the country is pleasant, that he is nearing 80, that he is anxious to make the best use of the very little time he may yet have in the world, and that he hopes by Bhagavan's grace to visit the ashramam again, travelling by air. Bhagavan drew my attention to Colombo Ramachandra's speech delivered at Colombo on the occasion of the Golden Jubilee of Vivekananda's speech at the Chicago Conference, and printed in the Ramakrishna Vijayam of the Tamil month Aipasi. In it, Ramachandra says, Vivekananda, on his return from America, said in his speeches that South India was going to take a leading part in the spiritual regeneration of the world, that in the 20th century there was going to rise in South India a flood of Atmic power which would inundate not only the whole of India but the entire world. That force is what is now being generated and radiated by Aurobindo and Bhagavan in South India. Bhagavan was reading an English translation of a French letter received from one Zhikovsky and family of Czechoslovakia to this effect: I and my family are grateful to Bhagavan for all his blessings so far. I hope to go and see Bhagavan, God willing. Meanwhile, I pray Bhagavan may send such instructions or directions as he may deem fit. Bhagavan is not able to recognize the writer, but says he must be one of those who wrote from Europe about the time Brunton first wrote about Bhagavan, that they knew long ago that is, long before Brunton's writing about Bhagavan and his teaching, and that they had been practicing what Bhagavan taught. Bhagavan thinks the writer of the letter must be one of those who read about him and his teachings from what appeared from the pen of Humphreys, who became a devotee of Bhagavan about 1910-11 in some journals at that time. 2:11:45 morning. Dilip Kumar Roy read out another poem composed by him on Bhagavan. Then he sang a few songs. Then he asked Bhagavan, "What is the best way of killing the ego?" Bhagavan, "To each person, that way is the best which appears easiest or appeals most. All the ways are equally good as they lead to the same goal, which is the merging of the ego in the self. What the Bhakta calls surrender, the man who does vichara calls Jnana. Both are trying only to take the ego back to the source from which it sprang and make it merge there." Roy, "But what is the best way for me? Bhagavan must know." Bhagavan did not reply. This is only usual with Bhagavan. He leaves it to each devotee to find out what sadhana appears most easy to him. Afternoon. Mr. Roy again sang a few songs. At the end he asked Bhagavan, "Music also helps one to develop bhakti, does it not?" Bhagavan, "Yes, yes." When Roy was taking leave, he asked Bhagavan whether Bhakti Marga could be followed with advantage and whether it would lead to Jnana. Bhagavan, "Yes, yes, Bhakti is Jnana Mata, that is, the mother of Jnana." 6:11:45 evening. An elderly gentleman and a young man were sitting in front of Bhagavan. A little before Bhagavan was about to start for his evening stroll, the young man approached Bhagavan and said that his companion had lost his eyesight. Bhagavan nodded as usual. Soon after, Bhagavan got up and told us, "He says he has lost his eyes. I have lost my legs. He comes and tells me, to whom am I to go and complain?" For nearly a month or more, Bhagavan has been having more than usual trouble with his legs, either due to rheumatism or deficiency of B vitamin. But how serious it is may be realized from his saying he has lost his legs. This is not the first time he has said, "All of you come and complain to me. To whom am I to go and complain?" This is quite consistent with his teaching that there is nothing but the self and that he is that. 8:11:45 morning. When on 2:11:45 Mr. Roy asked Bhagavan the best way of killing the ego, Bhagavan said, "To ask the mind to kill the mind is like making the thief the policeman. He will go with you and pretend to catch the thief, but nothing will be gained. So you must turn inward and see where the mind rises from, and then it will cease to exist." In reference to this answer, Mr. Thambidurai of Jaffna, who has been living in Palakottu for over a year, asked me whether asking the mind to turn inward and seek its source is not also employing the mind. So I put this doubt before Bhagavan, and Bhagavan said, "Of course we are employing the mind. It is well known and admitted that only with the help of the mind has to be killed. But instead of setting about saying there is a mind and I want to kill it, you begin to seek the source of the mind, and you find the mind does not exist at all. The mind turned outwards results in thoughts and objects. Turned inwards, it becomes itself the self. Such a mind is sometimes called Arupa Manas or Suddha Manas. Today, the doorway on the south facing Bhagavan's seat has been closed and a window constructed in its place, and the middle window on the northern wall has been replaced by the doorway removed from the southern wall. Going through this doorway, Bhagavan need not climb any steps. 11:45 morning. Mahavir Prasad, Chief Engineer UP, who has been staying here for about 20 days, asked Bhagavan, I find it said in Mahayoga that in the beginning of meditation one may attend to the breath, that is, its inspiration and expiration, and that after a certain amount of stillness of the mind is thereby attained, one can dive into the heart seeking the source of the mind. I have been badly in want of some such practical hint. Can I follow this method? Is it correct? Bhagavan, the thing is to kill the mind somehow. Those who have not the strength to follow the inquiry method are advised pranayama as a help to control the mind. And pranayama is of two kinds, one of controlling and regulating the breath and the other of simply watching the breath. Prasad, during meditation, I sometimes attain a state lasting for about 15 minutes, during which I am not aware of anything and am free from all thoughts. Some have told me that such a state is what may be called Yoga Nidra, and that one should guard against such a state as bad. Bhagavan, one should endeavor to get beyond sleep. For some reason, Bhagavan did not answer further the query put by Prasad. I thereupon advised Prasad to read Crumbs from the Table, where this particular matter is dealt with. Bhagavan also asked us to take a copy of the book and give it to Prasad. We did so. Evening. A visitor. I don't know what Kundalini is. Bhagavan. Kundalini is one name given by the yogic people for what may be called the Atma Shakti inside the body. The Vichara school calls the same power Jnana. The Bhakta calls it love or Bhakti. The yogic school says that this power is dormant in Mooladhara at the base of the spinal cord, and that it must be roused and taken through the various chakras onto Sahasrara at the top in the brain to attain moksha. The Jnanis think this power is centered in the heart, and so on. 12:45 morning. A visitor from the Punjab asked Bhagavan, when the mind or ahankar is killed, is that stage an inert stage? Bhagavan, why do you bother about the Jnani state? You understand your present state. Visitor, the mumukshu naturally wants to know about the mukti state, which is his goal. Bhagavan kept quiet for a little while and then said, you admit mind has to be killed. Why don't you do it first and see for yourself then whether that stage is inert or without consciousness? Visitor, when ahankar goes, will ahamvritti exist? Bhagavan, that which is always is. If the ahankar dies, the reality exists as it has always existed. You may speak of it as having ahamvritti or simply aham. It is all the same. That which exists is I am or aham. 18:11:45. This morning about 6 a.m., Vaikuntha Vasar, an attendant, was massaging Bhagavan's legs. After he had been massaging for about half an hour, Bhagavan expressed, I vaguely feel that something is being massaged. This is perhaps a glimpse into the inner life of Bhagavan. He was not in any trance or special samadhi then, but in his usual state. 12:11:45 afternoon. One Rishikeshananda Swami of the Ramakrishna Mission is here. It seems he has been advised by Swami Siddheshwarananda to visit Bhagavan. Bhagavan spoke about Siddheshwarananda and showed two books, one containing his lectures, causeries, and another which was received only 3 weeks back, though dispatched from France in 1941. Rishikeshananda said that Siddheshwarananda had learnt French very well and spoke fluently in that language. He also said that one Vijayananda Swami was working in South America and was very popular there in spite of hostile propaganda by Christian missionaries. Two ladies of affluence supported the Swami and asked him to remain there. One of the ladies was Mrs. Quirellis, known to the ashramam as Mamita, who had adopted the Canaries boy Raman and who is staying at Bangalore now near the Ramakrishna Mission. Siddheshwarananda intends to come to India for a few months and hopes to visit Ramanashramam also then. The talk drifted to the clothes these Swamis wear in foreign countries. Rishikeshananda told Bhagavan that generally they wear European clothes and that while delivering lectures they wear long and flowing ochre-colored robes and a turban such as Vivekananda is seen wearing in some pictures. 21:11:45 morning. The Swami was asking Bhagavan about the characteristics of a jnani. Bhagavan said they are all described in books such as the Bhagavad Gita, but that we must bear in mind that the jnani's state, being one which transcends the mind, cannot be described with the help merely of the mind, and that all description therefore must be defective. Only silence can correctly describe their state or characteristics. But silence is more effective than speech. From silence came thought, from thought the ego, and from the ego speech. So if speech is effective, how much more effective must its original source be? In this connection, Bhagavan related the following story. Tattvaraya composed a bharani, a kind of poetic composition in Tamil, in honor of his Guru Swarupananda and convened an assembly of learned pandits to hear the work and assess its value. The pandits raised the objection that a bharani was only composed in honor of great heroes capable of killing 1,000 elephants, and that it was not in order to compose such a work in honor of an ascetic. Thereupon the author said, "Let us all go to my Guru and we shall have this matter settled there." They went to the Guru, and after all had taken their seats, the author told his Guru the purpose of their coming there. The Guru sat silent, and all others also remained in Mauna. The whole day passed, night came, and some more days and nights, and yet all sat there silently, no thought at all occurring to any of them, and nobody thinking or asking why they had come there. After 3 or 4 days like this, the Guru moved his mind a bit, and thereupon the assembly regained their thought activity. They then declared, "Conquering 1,000 elephants is nothing beside this Guru's power to conquer the rutting elephants of all our egos put together. So certainly he deserves the bharani in his honor." Afternoon. A lady visitor from Sri Aurobindo's ashram asked Bhagavan, "When I concentrate, all sorts of thoughts rise and disturb me. The more I try, the more thoughts rise up. What should I do? Bhagavan: yes, it will be so. All that is inside will try to come out. There is no other way except to pull up the mind each time it wants to go astray and to fix it on the self. Bhagavan quoted the verse in the Bhagavad Gita which says that as often as the wavering mind goes after anything, it should be drawn away and fixed in the self. Shiva Mohan Lal asked Bhagavan, when I concentrate here in Bhagavan's presence, I am able to fix my thought on the self easily. But in my place, it takes a long time and much trouble to do so. Now, why should it be so, especially as I feel convinced that Bhagavan is everywhere and is my Antaryami? I said, it must of course be so. Though we are told that God is immanent everywhere, are we not also told that He is more manifest in some objects or places than in others? Example, in temples and images or avatars? Bhagavan said, ask Muruganar who is here. He has sung a song where he says Ramanashramam is not simply here for him but everywhere. Thereupon, Muruganar read out the following stanza from Ramana Malai. Ramana Malai, which means, because by his grace the mind has attained quiescence and remains calm everywhere as it used to remain at Ramanashramam, wherever I may go in this world, it is to me Ramanashramam, to which even Devas go with keen desire. In other words, Ramanashramam is Chidakasha, which is everywhere, and to which we gain access by killing the mind. Bhagavan added, time and place really do not exist. Even in the radio, we have a hint of this truth. We have Hyderabad here. What is sung there, we hear here at the same time as it is sung there. Where is time and place? Dr. Srinivasa Rao asked Bhagavan, what is the meaning of being in sleepless sleep? Bhagavan, it is the Jnani's state. In sleep, our ego is submerged and the sense organs are not active. The Jnani's ego has been killed and he does not indulge in any sense activities of his own accord or with the notion that he is the doer. So he is in sleep. At the same time, he is not unconscious as in sleep, but fully awake in the self. So his state is sleepless. This sleepless sleep, wakeful sleep, or whatever it may be called, is the Turiya state of the self, on which, as the screen, all the three avasthas, the waking, dream, and sleep, pass, leaving the screen unaffected. Bhagavan said that instead of holding on to that which exists, we are looking for that which does not. We bother about the past and the future, not realizing the truth of the present. We do not know the Adi, beginning, or the Antam, end, but we know the middle. If we find out the truth of this, we shall know the beginning and the end. Bhagavan quoted from Bhagavad Gita, I am in the heart of all beings and am their beginning, middle, and end. Bhagavan also said the reality is only Mauna and quoted Tayumanavar. That is, if we scrutinize all the religions which look so different, we find nothing discrepant at all in them, but they are only your Lord's sport. They all end in quiescence or Mauna as rivers merge in the sea. In this connection, Bhagavan also said, when one talks of Brahmakara Vritti for the mind, it is something like saying Samudrakara Nadi about the river which has merged in the ocean. Night. Following Bhagavan's quotations from the Gita, Rishikeshananda referred to a verse from Mandukya Upanishad in which the words Adi and Anta occur. Bhagavan took it out and explained the text, which says, "That which was not in the beginning and which won't be at the end, but which is only in the middle, can't be real. Only that can be real, which is not only in the middle, but also at the beginning and the end." Dr. Srinivasa Rao asked Bhagavan, "When we inquire within, who am I? What is that?" Bhagavan, "It is the ego. It is only that which makes the vichara also. The self has no vichara. That which makes the enquiry is the ego. The I about which the enquiry is made is also the ego. As the result of the enquiry, the ego ceases to exist and only the self is found to exist." I asked Bhagavan, "It seems this morning Rishikeshananda quoted some text which says, 'Wherever the mind goes, that is samadhi.' How can that be? Our mind goes after whatever it likes. Can that be samadhi?" Bhagavan, "That passage refers to jnanis. Whatever they may be doing, there is no break in their samadhi state. Their bodies may be engaged in whatever activities they were intended by prarabdha to go through, but they are always in the self. We associate or identify ourselves with the body. Whatever it does, we say we do. The Bhagavad Gita says, 'The wise man will think that the senses move among the sense objects and be unattached to the activities of the sense organs.' I would go further and say that the jnani does not even think that. He is the self and sees nothing apart from himself. What the Bhagavad Gita says in the above passage is for the abhyasi or the practicer. There is no harm in engaging in whatever activities naturally come to one. The hindrance or bondage is in imagining that we are the doers and attaching ourselves to the fruits of such activities." In this connection, Bhagavan also said, "A man says, 'I came from Madras,' but in reality he did not come. The jatka or some other vehicle brought him from his house to the railway station. The train brought him to Tiruvannamalai railway station, and from there some other cart brought him here. But he says, 'I came.' This is how we identify ourselves with the acts of the body and the senses." Bhagavan also quoted from the Vedanta Chudamani to the effect that the activities of the jnani are all samadhi, that is, he is always in his real state, whatever his body may happen to be doing. Bhagavan also referred to Rajeshwarananda and said that once he planned to take a big party of pilgrims with Bhagavan in their midst. Bhagavan said, "I did not consent to go, and the thing had to be dropped. What is there I could go and see? I see nothing. What is the use of my going anywhere?" This is one of those self-revealing statements which sometimes escape Bhagavan's lips. The following remarks were also made by Bhagavan this night. The jnani sees he is the self, and it is on that self as the screen that the various cinema pictures of what is called the world pass. He remains unaffected by the shadows which play on the surface of that screen. See with the physical eye and you see the world. See with the eye of realization, everything appears as the self. To see an object that is in the dark, both the eye and the light of a lamp are required. To see the light only, the eye is enough. But to see the sun, there is no need of any other light. Even if you take the lamp with you, its light will be drowned in the light of the sun. Our intellect or buddhi is of no use to realize the self. To see the world or external objects, the mind and the reflected light or chidabhasa, which always arises with it, are necessary. To see the self, the mind has simply to be turned inside, and there is no need of the reflected light. If we concentrate on any thought and go to sleep in that state, immediately on waking, the same thought will continue in our mind. People who are given chloroform are asked to count 1, 2, etc. A man who goes under after saying 6, for instance, will, when he again comes to, start saying 7, 8, etc. In some books, the ego is compared to a leech. Before leaving one body, it takes hold of another. 22:11:45 morning. Bhagavan explained how it is said in books that the highest possible happiness which a human being can attain, or which the 10 grades of beings higher than man, ending with gods like Brahma, can attain, is like foam in the deluging flood of the bliss of the self. Imagine a man in robust health, of vigorous adult age, endowed with unsurpassed wealth and power, with intellect and all other resources, and married to a fair and faithful wife, and conceive of his happiness. Each higher grade of being above man is capable of 100-fold greater happiness than that of the grade below. But the highest happiness of all the 11 grades of being is only the foam in the flooding ocean of divine bliss. In this connection, Bhagavan narrated the following story. A king was passing through a forest in all his pomp and pageantry, with his army and retinue behind him. He came across a man with not even a cod piece on him, lying on the ground, with one leg cocked over the other, and laughing away, apparently supremely happy and contented with himself and all the world. The king was struck with the man's happy state and sent for him. But when the king's men approached the nude ascetic and delivered the king's message, he took absolutely no notice and continued in his ascetic bliss. On being told of this, the king himself went to the man, and even then the man took no notice. Thereupon it struck the king that this must be no common man, and said, Swami, you are evidently supremely happy. May we know what is the secret of such happiness, and from which guru you learnt it? Thereupon the ascetic told the king, I have had 24 gurus. Everything, this body, the earth, the birds, some instruments, some persons, all have taught me. All the things in the world may be classed as either good or bad. The good taught him what he must seek. Similarly, the bad taught him what he must avoid. The ascetic was Dattatreya, the Avadhuta. After Bhagavan returned from his morning stroll about 8 a.m., some visitor prostrating himself seems to have spilled out his entire stock, a good quantity of snuff. Attendant Krishnaswamy noticed it and collected the snuff and threw it out. This reminded Bhagavan of some incidents in his life. He said, Tobacco is a germicide. When I was in Virupaksha cave, one day I suddenly found one tooth gave sharp pain when the cold rice came in contact with it, and I could eat no more. I stopped eating and thought I would have to die of starvation. Vasudeva Sastri was then living with me. He had gone out at the time. When he returned to the cave, I told him of my toothache. He said it was nothing and that a little tobacco would cure it, killing the germs. As we had no tobacco with us, somebody who had snuff with him gave me a little snuff and advised me to press it against the tooth, and it gave immediate relief, so much so that I was able to eat my next meal. When I examined the tooth, there appeared to be something like a dot on it. Gradually, it became a hole. Later on, a gentleman who was a district munsif at Tirukoilur and visiting me came to know of it and sent a dentist from Madras. The dentist came, stayed here 3 days, charging rupees 300 for his stay, and did nothing substantial except cleaning my teeth, pulling out one tooth and a part of another. Even before I came here, I knew of the power of tobacco. When the Periyar Dam was constructed and the water first allowed to pass in the canals, the water came on in a flood and there was plenty of fish in the water. The fishermen used to divert the water by means of a side channel and let it into a pond into which they had thrown a number of bundles of tobacco stems, that is, the stumps after the leaves had been utilized for making cigars. The moment the fish got into the pond, they became unconscious or dead on account of the poison of the tobacco and began to float. And the fishermen got heaps of fish in this way. Afterwards, I came across the following stanza in Tayu Manavar, which alludes to the above practice of fishermen. Translation: I am struggling like the fish caught in the pond, whose waters, diverted from the flood, had been poisoned by flesh eaters. Is it possible for me to understand your hidden kindness, O Almighty, who, lying concealed in my heart, is moving me about like a puppet? After this, at Dr. Srinivasa Rao's request, Bhagavan explained the stanza occurring at the end of Sukhavari, commencing Ennalum Udalilo, and the last 4 stanzas in Mandalathin of Tayu Manavar. Later in the morning, at Rishikeshananda's request, Bhagavan recounted his first experience of the self in his upstairs room at Madura. When I lay down with limbs outstretched and mentally enacted the death scene and realized that the body would be taken and cremated and yet I would live, some force, call it Atmic power or anything else, rose within me and took possession of me. With that, I was reborn and I became a new man. I became indifferent to everything afterwards, having neither likes nor dislikes. Dr. Srinivasa Rao asked Bhagavan how he first came to have bhakti. Bhagavan replied, the first thing that evoked bhakti in me was the book Periya Puranam, which I came across in my house, which belonged to a neighbor and which I read through. It was, however, only after the experience described above that I used to go daily to the temple and pray that I should become devoted like one of the 63 saints, Nayanmar, of Periya Puranam. Afternoon. Dr. Srinivasa Rao told the Swami, I have heard from one who said he saw it that when Bhagavan was in Skandashramam, a snake once crept over his body. Bhagavan said, snakes raise their hoods and look into our eyes, and they seem to know when they need not be afraid, and then they pass over us. It did not strike me either that I should do anything to it. Later, Bhagavan said, even though we usually describe the reality as Sat, Chit, Ananda, even that is not quite a correct description. It cannot really be described. By this description, all that we endeavor to make plain is that it is not Asat, that it is not Jada, and that it is free from all pain. Again, Bhagavan said, we are all in reality Sat Chit Ananda, but we imagine we are bound and are having all these pains. I asked, why do we imagine so? Why does this ignorance or ajnana come to us? Bhagavan said, inquire to whom has this ignorance come, and you will find it never came to you, and that you have always been that Satchidananda. One performs all sorts of penances to become what one already is. All effort is simply to get rid of this viparita buddhi or mistaken impression that one is limited and bound by the woes of samsara. Later, Bhagavan said, the spark of Jnana will easily consume all creation as if it were a mountain heap of cotton. All the crores of worlds being built upon the weak or no foundation of the ego, they all topple down when the atomic bomb of Jnana comes down upon them. Bhagavan said, all talk of surrender is like pinching jaggery from the jaggery image of Lord Ganesha and offering it as Naivedya to the same Lord Ganesha. You say you offer your body, soul, and all possessions to God. Were they yours that you could offer them? At best, you can only say, I falsely imagined till now that all these which are yours, God's, were mine. Now I realize they are yours. I shall no more act as if they are mine. And this knowledge that there is nothing but God or self, that I and mine don't exist, and that only the self exists, is Jnana. He added, thus there is no difference between Bhakti and Jnana. Bhakti is Jnana Mata or mother of Jnana. Talking of the innumerable ways of different seekers after God, Bhagavan said, each should be allowed to go his own way, the way for which alone he may be built. It will not do to convert him to another path by violence. The Guru will go with the disciple in his own path and then gradually turn him into the supreme path at the right moment. Suppose a car is going at top speed. To stop it at once or to turn it at once would be attended by disastrous consequences. The talk then turned to the names of God, and Bhagavan said, talking of all mantras, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad says, Aham is the first name of God. The first letter in Sanskrit is A, and the last letter Ha, and Aha thus includes everything from beginning to end. The word I am means that which exists, self-shining and self-evident. I am, Atma, Aham, all refer to the same thing. In the Bible also, I am is given as the name of God. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Sarvam Sri Ramanarpanamastu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.